I feel like I am actually dealing with a little bit of ignorance myself, and I feel like I have some ignorance about white people's experience. Now, I have heard a lot about white people's experiences behind closed doors. Okay, because white people have been opening up to me over the last 3 decades. About race, whether it's about fear of speaking out, like we've spoken about before, or whether it's about standing up to a racist family member, or whether it's about kind of what you talked about earlier, which is a recognition in themselves that they were ignoring these issues or that they were ignorant of the issues and now they realize they're not. But then when I ask people to come on the show to like share that, they don't want to do it. Even though we've had a great conversation, one-on-one, there's been no hostility, there's nothing. They are afraid. And not only white people, but minorities, as people in minority groups as well, have been fearful of coming on the show, including our mutual friend who you mentioned earlier. So it's difficult, right? Because I can't fault anyone for being fearful. It's reasonable to be fearful about engaging in this because people have literally been killed, just for talking about these issues and trying to make things better for our society. In fact, it's a likely occurrence if you ever gain enough power to actually make any type of real influence that you will be targeted at the very least, killed at the worst. And so I understand that aspect of it, but there seems to be something different. Like you said earlier, there seems to be a different kind of nature to their fear. Something internal, something that I can't place, something that I haven't really been able to pin down because no one has articulated it to me who's experiencing it. All I can see, I've noticed literal physiological effects that, you would see, like, how we shake sometimes if we're scared or something like that. I've literally seen those effects just by having a conversation with someone about race. Multiple times, many different white people every time. And it got me thinking, like, this is so deep-seated that, like, I can see a physical response from them. But, like, what is the origin of this? Like, are they taught to be afraid from a young age and they grow up being fearful? Because I've never seen that. And, I went to school with mostly white people, didn't see that, didn't experience it. Where does this fear come from? And why does it manifest so strongly when we're simply talking? Because I think that is going to be the key to understanding how to really move things forward. Because right now, even bringing people to the table for a conversation is extremely difficult.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good observation that you've made. And, the thing that comes to my mind is that we don't know what to be afraid of, or maybe those people wouldn't know exactly what to be afraid of. They just know that they need to be afraid because that's going to be a vulnerable position. So I don't really know. I'm trying to think of like my own experience and what would give me fear.
Well, I mean,
maybe I'm gonna have to take that as a takeaway to like go ask some white people. Like,
please do, yeah. But
white person to white person, I don't know. Like, yes. It sounds so stupid to
talk to your white brothers,
like
Matt. Help me find out.
It sounds so stupid, but yeah. I think there's got to be an element of vulnerability and a fear of the unknown that is going to be motivating this kind of response. I don't know what's going to happen, but maybe only bad things could happen because I'm putting myself out there and I'm getting involved. So now I'm part of it, and I don't know what's going to happen, but there's plenty of not good things that have happened from it. I'm not exactly sure.
Fear
Like
of the unknown, then, huh?
I would categorize it as fear of the unknown, and I would also put like a survival element in there, because I think people understand that race problems are very visceral and they are very, very deep. And to involve yourself in it would be at some point risking a certain survivability, or even the perception of risking a survivability by getting involved. And guess what? It's easier for me to not come on the show, right? It's easier for me to not have these conversations, because I'm in a position where I guess I don't really need to have them. I mean, everybody needs to have them, but I think my ego could convince me that, hey, I'm fine. Like, racism is Black people's problem, or it's Asian people's problem. And, I'm not racist. So why do I need to get involved, or something like that? So I don't know. I feel like, we've been talking for 2 hours just about my own ignorance, just as like a lack of education and a lack of context, and it's applied towards the area of racism. So yeah, I don't feel like scared about what we've talked about. This is all like real life stuff. It's human nature. Yeah, I think it's a relationship, and it's personal relationship for you and I, but it's also just being related to other humans. It's a relation to our species, which I think is also very, very lacking. We're taught a lot of adversaries that we need to have right now. We're taught, look at the last 4 years. It's extremely polarized. Like, our culture has polarized very far apart, and we have plenty of other adversaries to worry about. So everybody kind of can find another group to hate on, and to really like own a hatred for, if you want to. There's plenty of options out there, and plenty of people promoting that kind of stuff. So I think like the fear and the reluctance would be a fear of getting involved, maybe from a survivability standpoint. Maybe perhaps it's akin to watching somebody get robbed and not wanting to get involved because you might get shot too, even though it's the right thing to do to jump in. That there's got to be an element.
I think that's a really good analogy there.
Yeah, I would have to like sit down and think a little bit more about that, and kind of let the juices marinate in my brain. Those 3 little brain cells that I have left that are working overtime on this one. Yeah, but yeah, I think now, there's such a saturation of other stuff. There's still stuff in my list here that we're not going to get to in this conversation, but one of those things is that there are too many causes. There's too much. There's a huge flood of stuff out there. You're supposed to be outraged for a lot of oppressed minorities and genders, and maybe a lack of genders, and everything else that's going on in the rest of the world too, not just in America. There's no shortage of suffering or causes to join. And there's also, somebody in the comments is talking about ego and vulnerability and stuff. I think, there's so much stuff that you feel like maybe you have to be involved with to be a good human. So I think there's like a guilt factor in not being involved, and also an avoidance of responsibility by not getting involved. So I think that visceral reaction, it visibly would demonstrate there's a very complicated answer behind it, and kind of a hidden tangled ball of string,
I think
where you'd have that gut response, but you don't know why you're having it. And for me, I would attribute that to like your reptilian brain fear response, and your all these huge complex reasons are kind of driving it. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think that's a really good way of describing it. Is that like that tangled knot? You know, I feel like the key lies in untangling it. You know, the key lies in understanding how we got here. You know, how did we get all tangled up in our hearts, and figure out how to untangle that. I have walked that path before and had really long conversations with individuals trying to do exactly that, and I found some success. And what I would describe the nature of that success as being is changing people's thought patterns, right? Or them changing them, basically, right? Like me displaying for them their current thought pattern and like what it all means, them examining it for the very first time themselves as someone else is presenting it to them from the outside, and they're perceiving it for the first time as it actually, operates, and they're disgusted by it, or they realize that it's not something they want. I've even had people try to, after our conversations have finished and they have kind of rejiggered the way that they're thinking, they try to say again what they originally were trying to say at the beginning. I've had somebody say it, hear their own voice, and it like made them uncomfortable. That the thing that came out of their mouth was them making them feel uncomfortable because they no longer believed it. And they had to acknowledge that because it was just so, literally, it was just so far from what they now believe that like they just couldn't, they couldn't even handle it, even though like they had programmed themselves to repeat it. So I don't know. It is complicated, man. There's obviously some stuff going on. Thanks for watching. For access to the full-length conversation and all of the 2-hour-long unedited conversations that I've had on race, click the support link in the description below. Thanks for your support, and see you next time.